My name is Manda Whitney, and I am an anti-money laundering investigator and certified fraud examiner. Money laundering is taking the proceeds of crime and disguising their source somehow, and that can be used through like depositing at different places, transferring it to different bank accounts, like doing as much as possible to confuse where it actually came from. And that could be for any crime, from like drug trafficking to human trafficking to fraud. And so fraud falls in there, and so like it's adjacent to money laundering. Money laundering is what happens after the fraud occurs, right? You want to be able to like get the funds out of there and make sure that nobody can trace them. So what I do, what the bank does, is basically, yes, like you say, somebody's activity might get flagged in the bank, and that could be through a number of ways, either through an algorithm that can detect it automatically, or maybe a branch staff notices that a customer is acting very strangely, and they might, basically alert the bank about it, and from there we triage it and, try and answer the questions, and then it comes to me basically to investigate a bit further to determine if what that person is doing is reasonable or not, and if it's not, then we basically report it to the government, to FinTrack, who's our regulator. And then FinTrack, the big government regulator, takes all of those reports and makes them available to law enforcement, which is what they can then use to help track down criminals, arrest them if necessary, or use them in court, use that as evidence in court as well. As to what can flag? A lot of things, right? It could be a giant deposit, it could be like, oh, suddenly let's say you developed a gambling addiction, and suddenly you see all these purchases going on in your account that weren't there before, and so that just automatically kind of flags, and that's what we have to look into. Some random person got some inheritance could flag, right? Because it's just simply out of your normal pattern of activity, right? And that doesn't mean that it's suspicious automatically. That's what the investigation is for, right? Can we reasonably determine where this money came from, why it's there, what it's being used for? Does that make sense? And if it does, it's like, great, fantastic, enjoy your life. And if it doesn't, then, we move on from there. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was surprised how much, like, a creative background can be helpful in this job. It isn't all just pure analysis and investigation. There is a certain amount of, you need to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes, right? You need to be able to put yourself in their mind and to try and think about why they're doing what they're doing. To unwind, a lot of it is gaming. Gaming's my big thing. It's been a thing since I was a kid, whether it's video games or board games. And lately it's been escape games, so that's been my big hobby that I have sunk all of the money I now make into. So that's a big one. It's always been an escape for me. I love the game medium and its interactivity and feeling a part of the story. Escape rooms came about in Canada about 2015, I think. I'm gonna be bad enthusiast. I can't remember when the very first actual game came out. I think it was like 2010 or something in Japan. And basically escape rooms are kind of like a live action puzzle video game. In the early 2000s, there was like online ones. There's little flash games that you could play, and I fell in love with those, like escape the room type games. And then someone said, why don't we make that in real life? Why don't we have a room full of puzzles that groups of people can come in to solve? And it blew up pretty immediately once it got here. Like, I think the first room opened in 2015, and by 2016 in Toronto alone, there were 60 companies. And so once I discovered them, it was like, we played our first, and it very much felt like, oh my gosh, I'm playing all my favorite video games, but in real life. And to look at this game now, it wasn't anything really special. It was like actually probably a pretty terribly designed room. But when you're there, you're with your group of friends, and even just the act of like opening up a box like with a key or something just got us all excited. And gosh help you if there was like a secret passage to another room. We're like, oh my gosh, there's more! Look, a door just opened! And so like we were just hooked, and I think about that room a lot now. But we were hooked, and so once we did that, and because we were in Toronto, like we just started mainlining them. like crazy, and then from there we just got really hooked into the industry, and it has become my obsession over the last 10 years or so. I should keep count. I know approximately how many I've done. So I've done approximately 400 by this point. But I do have friends. I am not considered a super enthusiast at that point. There are people in the world who have done over 2,000 at this point. It's been really interesting to see a medium from its inception. Like, this might be a fad. Like, it still might be a fad. We're only like 10 years into escape rooms being created. They might fade away out of popularity and everything. There might be influences. But regardless, seeing something like an entertainment medium like this from the start, everybody wanted to be considered the expert in their field, right? So everybody had an idea of what makes a good escape room. And having been a part of many creative communities, it was kind of fun to see, especially the business people argue about it. And just, it's like, oh, people don't care about story, for example. They don't care. They just want to solve the puzzles. And I would pop in there and be like, no, they don't care about the story because you didn't make a good one. That's all. I'm like, and we haven't figured it out yet, right? Like, they don't care about the story because, like, if you think about, like, film when it first started, like, it was a technological advancement, right? It was a cool thing. People saw a train coming down the track. That was all they needed. It was like, oh my god, it's the most amazing thing ever. And then when you had people who grew up with that technology, same thing with video games, come into their own, get into their formative years, that's how they wanted to express themselves, their stories, is through that same technological medium. And that's when you start to figure out, hey, if I turn the lens this way, that angle kind of conveys this feeling. And so it takes time for a medium to mature. And so we're kind of seeing it now. Hello and welcome to Room Escape Divas, your podcast on everything escape room. It kind of started from like us all meeting up after escape rooms and ranting about them because we played some amazing things and we played some terrible things, and us getting to like hack it apart was like just as much fun as actually playing the room. And we were like, I think it was my one friend who was just like, yeah, we should do this on a podcast. We should share it. We should have other people listen to us rant. Doesn't everyone have a podcast? We could do it. And so, sure, yeah, we got this crappy little Zoom mic, like probably the cheapest one you could get, one directional, 4 of us crowded around a table, like speaking into this mic. If you listen to our first podcast episodes, they are terrible. So terrible, like sound-wise, direction-wise, we were all kind of unhinged and ranting, much like I am right now. The other reason we were doing it is, again, we were seeing these community posts about what makes a good escape room, and everyone had their own idea of it. And all of us came from different backgrounds, right? Like, my one friend was a puzzle designer, so he knew his crap about puzzles. Like, and he would get so angry when people would say, like, my escape room only has a 2% escape rate. I'm like, well, that means you have shitty puzzles. Sorry. If people can't solve your room, they're not going to have that much fun, and they're not going to come back. Like, believe it or not, that's a terrible business decision. And my other friend had a big business background, so, like, he knew that side of it. And I came from the creative world, like the narrative background. And so we thought, why don't we share some of our ideas? We're sitting here analyzing everything. Maybe it might be of value to somebody. And that also became when people started reaching out to us saying, like, oh, I have ideas too, like, or, oh, I, teach this at a university, or, like, oh, we've created this special escape room that no one's ever done before. And then we started having guests, and so it became less of us just ranting. That still definitely was there, and more of us becoming kind of like hey, let's try and advance the industry. Let's talk to people who are making these things, who can potentially, share their ideas with the world. And it was interesting for us, too, to see what everybody was doing out there and how the industry was advancing. Hello and welcome to Room Escape Divas, your podcast on everything escape room. This week I am joined once again by Dr. Scott Nicholson.
I'm Scott Nicholson. I am a professor of game design at Wilfrid Laurier University over on their Brantford campus in Brantford, Ontario. I've got a long history of talking about games in social media. If you have gray in your hair and have been working with tabletop, you might know that I did a series called Board Games with Scott, which was the first series about board games on YouTube from 2005 to 2010. So that was interesting and ended up taking me to MIT for a year, and that was important. I'll talk about why later. My first encounter with escape rooms, I was in Singapore back in 2015. I was teaching some classes for the government on games and libraries and was wandering through one of the many shopping malls they have there and saw these escape rooms in shopping malls. While I was recovering from jet lag from my Singapore trip, I started to make a database of every escape room I could find on the internet. And that was, there were 400 of them that I could tell were escape rooms. Not all of them were English language, but if I could figure out it was an escape room, I added it to the spreadsheet, wrote them all with a survey, and got about a 50% response rate.
Nice.
Which is, if you've ever done Survey Resource, getting a 50% response rate in a just over the transom survey sent by email is crazy high for that kind of a thing. A number of people responded to me and said, I would normally not answer these questions, but I know you from Board Games with Scott. I have some trust in you, so I will tell you about my escape room. So that created the first big escape room survey back in 2016 and got me involved in the industry. Red Bull reached out to me through my connections that I'd made at MIT and asked if I wanted to be involved in creating the games for the Red Bull Escape Room World Championships. So I led a team of my students, and we did that in 2017 and 2019. Online escape rooms do need to offer that actor, that human connection, because they do need to offer something beyond what you could get by, getting a regular computer game.
Completely agree, because there's something thrilling about having, unlike a video game, I'm like, what can an escape room offer that a video game can't is often a question I ask myself. And one of it is that live feedback, that live interaction. It's not a dialogue tree I'm choosing from. It's like a person that I'm talking to, which is thrilling and something that video games can't often offer. It's a good supportive community, and it's very interesting to see how everyone's working more together now to advance the medium and to see where it's going and to see the innovations and the different things that are happening. For example, in Japan, they are much more puzzle focused. Like they don't really focus like narrative. Who cares? You're here to exercise your brain, right? So you go into a room, it'll be like a bunch of disconnected puzzles, and that's fine. That is what they want. That is great. Whereas somewhere like the Netherlands, a lot of places in Europe actually really focus on the experience, the story part of it. The puzzles might be simpler, but the actual narrative is much more built out, and they have a lot more theatrics about it. Same thing with like Seattle. Seattle has a big hotbed of escape rooms, but again, very puzzle focused. Montreal currently is probably in Canada the most well-known location for escape rooms. They actually had the number one rated room in the world last year. There's a big award show. It's called the Turpagas, and I can't remember what it stands for, and my friend is going to kill me because he helps make it. But it's a place called Escaparium, and the owner of that, basically made Montreal this like center of escape rooms, and he kind of set the bar. He makes very big, elaborate movie set style escape rooms. Like you walk in there and you feel like you're on a movie set. Montreal's kind of the hot spot for escape rooms in Canada. Toronto, despite having like that big start, it very much became it was more of a quantity thing. Finding like quality rooms in Toronto, they do exist. They very much do exist, but it's not really known as like an escape room hotspot. People don't flock here to try our escape rooms or anything. It is actually a little bit more experimental, which they are willing to try. I find that rooms in Toronto are willing to try new things more, and whether that's successful or not. And I really appreciate that experimental nature about it. I want a room where every decision that you make to get out of there makes logical sense, right? If you're trapped in a jail cell, there's no writing on the wall about the code for the door or anything. It's like, no, why wouldn't you use the materials at hand to try and, like, get a key off of something, or like, and so it's a much more mimetic room, or he's at least attempting to make a mimetic room. And even though it wasn't completely successful, like, I do have to appreciate the boldness in trying for it, and the innovation, because for me that's where the fear is that the medium will get stagnant, right? If we don't innovate, if we don't try new things, if we don't take these chances, then it's just kind of going to flatline, and if nothing new is being created, then we can't evolve as a form.
I'm going to go out on the limb as I continue to write about this stuff and say, escape rooms are not about puzzles. And I know that's going to be controversial when I make that statement.
Yes.
But I want people to think of them as something greater than puzzles. And it can be a challenge. And I know that's a controversial opinion, which is why it'll get people thinking about, well, how is it something greater than puzzles? How are puzzles simply the tool we're using to tell a story and the tool using to engage people? How do you put the players in a role that forces them to think about who they're supposed to be? Not just this external person who happens to be in a location having to solve a bunch of puzzles. We see this in escape rooms, and we see this in this room design. When you present the reward, and in this case the reward is crack the locks, open the box, get your thing, people then shut off their creative spaces. And we know this. We can predict that, because if people get focused on the reward, their ability to be creative goes down. So that's why I want to push this thing forward about saying, escape rooms are not about the puzzles. Because the puzzles are that path of, do puzzles get reward? And if we can get people to get away from that a little bit. There was a post in the enthusiast group recently about someone who was talking about, can't we just explore it for the story, explore it for the experience? And without that ticking clock, without that leaderboard, without that temptation of the rewards, we're creating these experiences where players do shut off all that creativity and get focused so much on the puzzles and on that path. So I know it's going to be a very long time before I'm going to be able to get there, but we can. I point to where escape rooms are today in the design structure back to where video games were in the 1980s.
Yes.
1980s video games were about a few simple mechanisms, earning as much points as you can. There wasn't a lot else. I'm engaging with the mechanisms. And there's a freedom that comes with when you accept, I'm going to engage with this world and see what happens and see how it plays out. Mm-hmm. And I could see an interesting path of escape room futures, whatever it becomes, be these narrative spaces where we're going to go in and explore this narrative path. And it could be that there's many different paths that you could explore. And again, that could hit the replayability thing. Mm-hmm. Is that I know in this game we want to take this path. Now, it means as designers, you have to design more than what everyone will see. But that's what we do in games anyway. In game design, you design a lot more than any one player sees. The advantage of not getting stuck on my escape room needs to look like escape rooms, because escape rooms look like escape rooms.
Right.
But rather, hey, what's going on with this game-based storytelling? What's going on with what's on consoles? What's going on way outside of all of this? How do we get people to engage? And I think a lot of my research always comes back to the concept of play. How do we get players to be playful and not puzzle-solving machines that are there to break out of the room? And part of play, and I've been using this in my board game design, an important part of play is power. That you're giving responsibility to the players. You're giving them some control over what's going on. They need to feel they have that control to make the story change, to make choices. They have to matter, which is my number one thing when I talk about game design, escape game design. Make the players matter. But in this case, even empowering them to go further, making their choices matter. And yes, it means you have to design more than what any one team will see, but that's how you're going to get people to come back and play the games.
I remember seeing all the discussions in the Facebook group and stuff where people would be like, well, yeah, escape rooms are great, but it's impossible to tell a good story in them. And I was like, I come from theater. I come from the video game world, too. And I'm like, come on. And granted, escape rooms have a really big challenge, which is they have about the length of a television episode or a movie, which has a very controlled, the creator is in complete control of that. But they have the interactivity of a game. So when you get players, when your main characters are coming into the room and they have control of the pacing, that's tough, right? It's a tough balance, because in a video game, yeah, it's the same thing, but you have all the time in the world to explore an environment, to discover it. You can put whatever details you want in there. In an escape room, gosh, everybody is very goal focused, because the second you get in that room, what is everybody's, first thought? How do I get out? How do I immediately, solve my goal? And so sometimes you'd open up a box and there would be like a little piece of paper with a journal page in it. It'd be like, look, this explains some of the story of how all this came to be. And you just like chuck away the story page and you're like, where's the key? Because that's the thing that opens the door. And so yeah, of course people aren't going to pay attention to your story in that case. So it's been kind of a journey to integrate the puzzles with the narrative, right? And I saw some really good examples of that in the Netherlands was the first place I went where I was like, holy crap, yes, it can be done. Yes, it can be done. And I think the best example was where I had to identify a demon that was roaming around, and you realize that all these little environmental cues, all these little story bits that were happening throughout was actually important. And they had designed it in such a way that you noticed it, that you could recall it, that you could be like, aha, wait, I heard this sound throughout, maybe this from this animal, maybe this is the answer, and maybe it's this demon who always who controls this type of animal and stuff, and it's that kind of thing that really can connect it. The moment that I was like, I could do this, I didn't really think I could do this, but it was actually a large-scale event done here in Toronto, and it was called Escape the Bank, and it was okay. It was the first of it, it was the first one we played of its kind. It wasn't the first one in existence, but it was designed for 80 people. And, you go in, there's a big space, and it looks very exciting. There's a big vault, there was people walking around in fedoras and suits, and the whole thing was you were all doing a bank heist and everything. And what it equated to basically was paper puzzles on a table, and I was like, well, that sucks. There's a big vault over there, we don't get to open it, and we got all these people walking around in costumes, we don't really get to talk to them unless it's for a hint. Come on. And afterward, again, we were sitting there talking about it, telling our stories, and it was kind of a we should start a band moment, where one of our party was because we were talking about how we would do it. At the time, you didn't know, we only had just the regular escape rooms to compare to, and we're when you don't have the tech, when you don't have all the fancy things, when you don't have the set design and the small group, because that was the tough thing. It's how can you get 80 people to all experience the big wow moments at the same time? It's really hard. And not only that, it's well, you can't do a good large scale because there's no tech, there's no exciting things. I'm but yes, there is. They have the actors, we have the story, we have the narrative, we have all of these things that theater and film has been providing us. So it's we decided to try and make our own, and we did. We made a speakeasy themed room. We also were really 80 people decided to come to a bank and all rob it at once. That there was that aspect to it. So we're what is an event where people would have to use a password to get in or something? It was oh, speakeasy, right? And we did, we had our little thing okay, the mob boss who runs this, he really loves puzzles, I guess, and that's to get to different parts of the speakeasy, you have to do that. And so we wanted to make it more historically accurate. We wanted to have some fun with it. But we were okay, if there's no tech, how do we use our actors, right? We had all improv actors come in, and that was great. And we shifted more to social deduction puzzles, where you had to talk with somebody to get information out of them. You had to present them with something. We still had the traditional puzzles in there, but it was very much very different experience, and we were very successful with that event and ended up doing 2 more like it. So yeah, that got me. That was a very long-winded way of saying that got me confident enough to think, okay, I can do more of this. I can do more narrative design. And that led to me, giving consulting, doing consulting for escape rooms when they felt hey, can we beef up our narrative? that led to me getting a gig doing a take-home puzzle game where a lot of that was done through documentation. And I didn't realize I had these skills, or maybe I just didn't. I took, some of my training for granted, and thought, oh, everybody can do this. Everybody can, but you don't realize how long you've been doing it and how much experience you've gained until you meet someone who's doing it for the first time, and you're like, oh, okay, oh, cool. I didn't know I had the skill to offer, but yeah, it's been super fun since. That's what's exciting to me about escape rooms, is that it lets you experience something in a safe space that leaves you feeling slightly different than when you came in. And a good escape room for me as well lets everybody have what's known as their hero moment. There's two stories going on in an escape room. There's the story that the designer created that they want you to pay attention to, and maybe, that there's characters in that and everything. And then there's the player's story, right? My favorite part about escape rooms is after the fact, because then we tell our stories about what we did in the room, right? Did you see that part? Oh my gosh, I pulled the lever at just the right moment, or we were 30 seconds from the end. Did you see how I leapt for the button or something? And that the way that you can connect as a group, and that's what sets escape rooms apart from other mediums, is that they are inherently social, and that everybody gets, we always try to make sure everyone has their hero moment, the moment that they can feel excited and like they're part of that story, and that they contributed and helped everybody win. Actors, doing an escape room with actors in a room with an actor is great, but it's fun for different reasons. I will say who isn't the most fun to play with, and that's random people. I think largely they've abandoned what's called the I can't remember the booking system, the public booking system, where it's there's just a bunch of slots and you can fill it up with whomever. No, you want to go with a group of people, honestly. As much, and no matter how much they tell you, no, that's how you make friends. It's not. It's really not. And in fact, that's how you meet people you never want to see again. But the best people to play with, enthusiasts are fun to play with because everybody is kind of knows their roles. And the enthusiasts I've played with, I've been very fortunate in the people I've played with. I know that there are others out there who are maybe a nightmare to play with, but I haven't experienced it yet. They're great to play with because everyone's very respectful. New people, taking my friends to an escape room who have never been to an escape room, that's fun because you get to see somebody experience it for the first time. Because it is still exciting. Enthusiasts, we go in, we're alright, the door's gonna open there, and okay, there's a Caesar shift, okay, it's a Caesar shift. We gotta wait till we find the piece of paper that teaches us what a Caesar shift is, but we know what it is, so we're just gonna avoid solving that puzzle until they give us the information because we don't want to get ahead of them. That being said, we are also super stupid in escape rooms too. We definitely have our stupid moments. I talk I'm a genius. I'm really not. But yeah, with my friends who haven't done them before, yeah, it's exciting to see them. I always step back when there's an exciting thing to do, because pushing that button, pulling that lever, opening that door, that's very exciting, and seeing someone experience it for the first time again makes you feel excited again. I fully anticipate us to run amok and kind of just scatter, and so go but yeah, my general rule is going to be, if there's a cool thing to do, I'm going to let one of you do it, because I've done it a million times.
Amanda, is this your first time playing with newbies?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But it's been a while since I played without my regular team, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Because watching
a regular team.
But watching people play for the first time is actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
Because you're you get to watch their excitement, and you're hey, I remember feeling that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're go. Yeah. I'm still nervous too, but excited. Excited, nervous. Yeah.
But we all make it out. We all have to make it, right?
No, we're all gonna, yeah, well, I didn't get to that part. But we'll, TBD.
But no one walk fast.
What do you think your time's gonna be?
30 seconds to spare.
I think, 30 seconds to spare, I think.
30 seconds to spare? Okay.
Yeah, or it's gonna be a high. We're gonna get out. Yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
No enough rhyme.
How many hints do you think you're gonna use?
Huh?
How many hints do you think you're gonna use?
10.
10 hints.
10 hints.
Okay.
Because I ask a lot of hints sometimes.
And what made you choose one with an actor versus a regular old escape room?
Well, one of this was like simply for practicality. There aren't many escape rooms in Toronto that will do up to 12 people. So there's that. But also, Secret City Adventure does it well. And the benefit of an actor in a room is it increases immersion. They do it really well here, I already know. So, yeah, and it just kind of adds to the atmosphere to have a character there that you can connect with. And the fact that I'm with a bunch of actors tonight means that they're not going to be uncomfortable. Right? Anyway, so...
Bye! 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 Have fun!
One, two, three. This one's a video for you.
The way that escape rooms are going now is the challenge is that people feel like they have to become bigger and more intense and more elaborate, and like I mentioned, the $1 million escape room thing, right? And those are amazing escape rooms. Those are amazing experiences, but it makes everybody else feel like they have to do that too. And either you can't because like you don't have the budget, or you're not in a town that can handle that kind of sustainability, or like they just don't have the skills or whatever, what have you. But we shouldn't lose sight of those little magic moments. Like I said, the feeling of opening a box with a key can still be very magical, right? And I think you can have, so long as you have a well-designed room, so long as those puzzles make sense, so long as you're not punishing the players like in some way, so long as, like everything does make sense and fits within that world, and people are enjoying themselves, you have a good escape room. And there's been escape rooms I've played that, yes, have been technical marvels, have wowed me, have transported me to another world. And then there's escape rooms that have been very passionate, tiny projects that someone made out of love, that didn't have all of the like bells and whistles that the big ones had, but made me feel so left such a mark on me. For the most part, it was the story that sustained it. And I think, if we can remember those tiny little moments that give you such a sense of wonder, that's, that will help you in your design. The weird thing about the podcast is that it wasn't until I had decided to end it. By the end of the podcast, it was just me, and it was a lot of work. And at that time, I decided to go back to school, so I decided to end the podcast. It wasn't fun for me anymore, and the thing is, when we were doing it, we had no clue of who might be listening. We knew that some people listened because we would get some emails from time to time, and we get guests reaching out to us. But I never considered that, it was reaching, I think we had the audience that we did sheerly because we were literally the only escape room podcast. So, because of that, because we had such a niche, topic, and we found an audience pretty immediately, but we never paid attention to metrics. And it wasn't until a few months after I ended the podcast, I went to an escape room conference, and two things happened. One was that someone recognized me by my voice. That was weird. I never considered that, I could be recognizable like that. But the other one was, I never considered, like, that the podcast had an impact on anybody until I went up to a booth in, like, the, dealer's room or whatever. And so they were selling, I think they were, like, they were talking about their app. They had made some application, but they also were escape room owners. And I was like, oh yeah, I was talking with them about it, and I was like, okay, yeah, like, put me on your mailing list and stuff, and they're like, oh, you said you, like, design narrative in that, do you have a website? And so I gave them my website, and as I'm saying it, I was like, it's my name, and then, like, he pauses as he's writing, and then he, like, looks up at me, and he looks back down, and he was just like, are you from Canada? And I was like, yeah, I'm from Canada, and he was like, are you like the Manda Whitney? Like, I was, and he's like, do you have the? I'm like, I had a podcast. Yeah, it's like, is that what you're talking about? He's like, you're one of the Room Escape Divas, and I was like, yeah, and then he started telling me, like, about how our podcast got him through the pandemic, and, like, while his escape room was closed and he wasn't sure whether they were going to survive, he would just be working on his escape room and just have our podcast on, and, like, he said, like, the guests we had on and stuff, and the stuff we talked about, and he was like, it was so inspiring, and I'm trying to, like, put all those ideas into my escape room, and I was just like, oh, and so, like, that was rewarding. That was a rewarding, like, oh, I kind of did make a difference. That's surprising. And so.
That's so okay. Well, that's going in. Now.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if it's too, like, self-congratulatory or something, but it's like,
no,
yeah.
Amazing.